Zimbabweans are being urged to observe a 2-day national shutdown in protest to the government's alleged mismanagement of the country. Professor Brian Raftopoulos, a Zimbabwe activist and research fellow at the University of the Western Cape, joins us in studio this morning to shed light on the situation in Zim. Brian, thank you very much for coming in today. It's a pleasure to have you in our studio. Zimbabwe, a country very close to your heart. First of all, explain to us what exactly is going on in Zimbabwe at the moment. We've seen a lot of unrest in the past week or so.
Yeah, I think this is an accumulation of events that have been going on really for the past decade. But it was triggered by two key events. One was the delay in payments to the public sector civil servants. And the second was the introduction of what was called Statutory Instrument 64, which banned the imports of goods, which is the livelihood of the informal sector. And up to 94% of Zimbabweans now work in the informal sector. So this ban effectively undermines their livelihoods, and this has created a great deal of anger. And last week we saw the explosion of this in terms of the stairway, the bus, as well as the taxi drivers who were protesting against the harassment from the police and the constant foraging of money by the police through from the taxi drivers at the police stops. So this accumulation of events has led to what we've seen, and today there's a call again for a 2-day stay away. And I think what's important now is how the state has responded. And I think we've seen already the violence of the police. And again, this is a repeat of the manner in which the state has dealt with dissent in the past, which is in a very repressive way.
Brian, so the shutdown Zim activists are demanding the following. We can discuss these individually. You've touched on a couple of them, but paying civil servants on time, reducing roadblocks and stopping officers from harassing people for cash. President Rob Mugabe should fire and prosecute corrupt officials. The plans to introduce bond notes. And then removing the recent ban on imported goods. Now, you'd mentioned the payment of civil servants. Why can the government not afford, which seemingly is the issue, can they not afford to pay their civil servants?
Well, basically because they've got no revenue coming in, very little revenue coming in. And what they have had, for example, from the mines, they've been unaccountable for. Mugabe himself has said $15 billion has gone missing, and he himself says he doesn't know what has happened to that. So the government the production units in the country, industrialization has gone down seriously since the 1990s. Unemployment is huge in the country. So there's not enough revenue coming into the state, which is why they're now desperately trying to re-engage the international financial institutions. Recently, Minister of Finance Chinamasa was in London discussing with investors about coming into Zimbabwe. But for the IFIs, their main priority now is repayment of debt. They're looking for certain conditions before they re-engage. These are a plan to repay the debt, certain issues about the property rights, certain governance questions. And at the moment, Zimbabwe government is, in my view, not in a position to do that.
Brian, the taxi strike, I guess, which kicked off things last week. What are their sort of main grievances? Because I believe one of them is the roadblocks and allegedly bribes being taken. And then how does that tie into the subsequent strikes?
Well, as you said, the taxi strikes are there's so many roadblocks, and these are ways in which the police are trying to supplement their wages. So, you can face up to 3-4 roadblocks in a day driving through Harare. And this is causing problems for the taxi drivers who are not able to produce those fines because they're not making enough money. And this combines with the whole interconnection of issues which has happened. The informal sector, the taxi drivers, the public sector. It's a culmination of the crisis in the economy and the inability of people to maintain reproducible livelihoods. And again, as I said, this is a accumulation of events since the 1990s where people have struggled both against the decline in their livelihoods and against a state which is increasingly unaccountable to the citizenry.